recording just to make sure it's echoing in the recording as well, which I'm pretty sure it is. This is how it's going to be, and the recording's okay. I'm perfectly okay with that.
Now this is push to talk, so I unfortunately won't be able to talk while we're fighting. But
oh, that's okay. I'll commentate on your side and say what you would normally say. Oh my God, he's shooting me!
That's normally what I would say.
Oh, well, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for putting up with me for the last half an hour, because that has been very trying, I will say.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. Let me just throw this in chat that this is actually going to be live in case people want to see it. Pew Chat Die number 5 is live streaming. Go watch it. Oh, man. I'm not even sure if I'm ready. Like, I felt like we already should have gone through the entire video at this point.
Well, we can pretend that we have and everybody has missed it, and we can just do the wrap-up.
Right? I should have just recorded the entire time on a third camera. Watch Lazy DJ be frustrated with everything.
That probably would have made for a good series on its own.
Watch Savet continuously suggest to use a tin can and a string, but not say how long the string needs to be. So, I guess we'll just open it up with questions since we have plenty of those, and then we can just continue on. Dr. Lecter asked, who the hell, to keep it PG-13, is this Savet noob?
So that's a good question. I started playing in August of 2011. I actually had to look that up. Joined Familia, which is largely a pirate guild, although they branch into other play styles, at the high level of 3, because that's always a good idea. Ventured out into gray space, promptly got my rear end handed to me numerous times, and decided this would be a good home for me to learn, because if everybody's going to be shooting at you, you kind of have to get better at combat. And just stuck with it, became the commanding officer of Familia in September of 2012, I believe.
So who was the first person to pirate you? Do you remember?
I remember 2 people, and I don't remember which was the first. Perrin was one of the first, and Football Prophet was one of the other first. And what I remember about them, and one of the reasons that I got drawn into the pirate guilds, is even though they were killing me, they were extremely helpful. And when I would ask a question about weapons choices or combat or fighting, they were extremely helpful.
So, you know what I just learned in the last 60 seconds?
What did you just learn?
My cat wants to eat tape.
That's better than the tape eating your cat.
I suppose. And I did listen to you. Actually, there was one point I missed. You said Perrin, but who is the other one?
Football Prophet, the original commanding officer of Familia.
I did actually catch that. And I remember when Football Prophet started Familia. And so, you know what? With the time that you started, that actually would make you one of the first members as well, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't say I was one of the first members. I'm definitely one of the oldest current members. But there are definitely members that were there before me, and I was not one of the founders.
Football Prophet does make an occasional return as well, I've noticed. He was here a couple weeks back, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he pops his head in every couple months, plays for anywhere between one night and a week, and then we don't see him again for a little while.
Now, his name is Football Prophet, but are we talking about American football or like every other place in the world of football?
I'm going to assume American football.
Fair enough, I suppose. But last time he came back, it was football season, so you never know.
This is true.
So, who is Captain Feathersword? Before I even ask this question, is this Hawk Feather?
No, actually, I had to look. I had to look this up myself. And the running joke here between the Red Spy and myself is, and I'll refer to him as TRS from here on out. TRS used to give me an extremely hard time because I would go out of my way to give people the opportunity to not die, whether that be giving them chances in combat, whether that be giving them the option to pay 50 credits instead of 100,000 or 200,000 or 300,000 credits. So the running joke became that I was the fluffiest pirate he's ever seen. So I actually had to look up Captain Feathersword, which there is a video on YouTube. Since we're live streaming and probably can't insert that, but I definitely recommend Googling that because it's a TV personality pirate who has a sword that's made out of feathers to ensure that he's nice and fluffy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's as fluffy as he sounds. So I have to disagree with TRS in that Captain Feathersword is definitely fluffier than I am, and I have the ordered list as requested.
Okay. Okay.
First and foremost, I don't have either a sword or a feather, let alone an awesome sword made of feathers. So that right there kind of disqualifies me when compared to somebody as amazing as Captain Feathersword. The other reasons, I'm terrible at singing, which Captain Feathersword is not. I'm even worse at dancing. My pirate ship is not colorful enough. If you watch the videos, his ship is a orgy of Easter egg colors. It's amazing. And my boat is white, so I can't hold a candle there. And then, of course, the obligatory rape joke. It's not rape if you tickle them first. So
would you enjoy a golden gay time with Captain Feathersword?
That's an interesting question. I'm sure one of us would enjoy it.
I take it you didn't watch the Estrian Process Pew Chat Die?
No, I did watch the Estrian Process. What are you referring to?
Oh, well, apparently in Australia there's this actual ice cream bar, and it's literally called a golden gay time. And I'm sure I'm not going to get this right, but it's like everyone enjoys a golden gay time, and you can't enjoy one by yourself or something like that. Like, it's horrible.
I remember that now. I totally missed the context.
Oh, well, there's only one kind of golden gay time, I hope. I know there's not.
I think you would be wrong on that.
Yeah, I figured that out as soon as I said it. So, what is the original Pieces of 8, and who holds them?
So the original Pieces of 8 is a reference to the Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pieces of 8 to release the goddess Calypso, if memory serves. And they were held by the 9 pirate lords. So I've compiled a list of 9 people who right now I think are the most influential in where Familia has been, where we are now, and just in general. So obviously Football Prophet holds one of the pieces. As the founder of Familia, a vocal, outspoken personality, you can't deny Football Prophet his piece. Blastamasta is not active anymore, but he was also one of the original members. Very outspoken. He and I were at each other's throats quite often, but very, very dedicated to the guild. Great guy. Aton Clavin, another one of the long time members, which I'm not sure if he left or if he changed his name, but is always helping new pirates learn combat and instrumental in helping me come up the learning curve. There's of course YT 1300, the current commanding officer of Familia, longtime member. Basically, when I was leading, he was my right hand. Now that he's leading, I try to be his. And then a couple new members. V Sky is a old-time pirate that we picked up. He's been an amazing addition to the guild. He also smokes a pipe, so nobody that smokes a tobacco pipe can be bad. Digital Punk is one of the new members. Very helpful. A lot of progressive ideas. Yoda is actually one of my favorite members that we've ever had in FAMI. Yoda was so in order to explain this, FAMI's been through several different stages. We had the guild is named La Familia, which was the original name of the guild, and it started as cutthroat pirate, kill everybody, take no prisoners, and then, as I came in, I started bringing kind of the customer service flair to it, the nice pirate, the one that everybody likes, and was amazingly profitable at it. So we went through this stage where we had just an insane amount of growth, and somehow we convinced Yoda to join FAMI, but Yoda wasn't big on taking payments, so Yoda would simply fly around and kill anybody that didn't have a warranty. And this worked out great because I spent almost every minute that I played running around collecting payments and basically got rich for the work Yoda was doing. And anytime I would advertise our warranty offerings, it was avoid Yoda conditions, buy your warranty today, and people would go out of their way to buy warranties because they didn't want to meet Yoda without one. The other two members that I had listed, we've got TRS, simply because even though he left, came back, he's been inactive for a while. I'm not sure if he's active right now, but he's
definitely active on the forums.
Yes, he is. And he, love him or hate him, he was a great asset to the guild in terms of contributing role play, in terms of contributing activity, and he helped a lot with some of our rebranding efforts, which I'll go into in some of the other questions that were asked. And then the final one I wanted to call out was Hawkfeather, who has just been a loyal member. He is a great pirate, always represents the guild well.
So no Void members have any opportunity for the Pieces of Eight, do they?
There are some former members in Void, and I actually have no animosity towards them. They weren't really a big enough contributor to either where we were or where we are now to warrant inclusion in that list. But I really can't say anything bad against them because they are good pilots, they're good people, and I'm just glad that they're enjoying the guild that they're in right now.
Well, they do seem to have a pretty strong hold on gray space at the moment. Which I guess one of the questions is, what does FAMI ever plan to do about that?
See, that's an interesting question. And you can't ask that question without really diving into the mechanics of the game. There's no lasting impact to anybody doing anything in the game. If you take the stations, they're going to get taken back at some point. If you conquer Deneb, it's going to get reset a week later. If you park your Trident in B8 and you say, I own B8, there's really no meaningful impact to anything that you do in the game. So in terms of taking Gray back from another guild, there's really no point because everything that I do is not contingent on anything Void does. When I'm out practicing piracy, selling warranties, doing combat, Void being anywhere in gray space doesn't really impact anything that I do. So, like I said, I'm glad they're successful. I'm glad that they're having a good time. But whether they succeed or they fail is largely going to be determined by their leadership, their activity, and what they do, because it's really impossible for any guild to have any lasting impact on another guild in VO until until there's a meaningful consequence of dying.
I think my neighbor must have got a new motorcycle. Is what's going on. So why was La Paparazzi such a loudmouth?
So I'm not sure if that's an honest question or tongue-in-cheek. La Paparazzi was a bot that a number of people could talk through, and it would broadcast on 100 or sector chat. So he was largely a loudmouth because he was controlled by a number of loudmouths who could echo their comments and their thoughts through him semi-anonymously.
And I'm assuming all these loudmouths were members of Family, though, right?
Well, that's correct.
Yeah. So who was the better pirate, espionage or TRS? And why did you boot them out?
So I've got to say that espionage was the better pirate. And keeping in mind that these are both the same person.
What? I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Actually, when the Red Spy originally dreamed up this espionage character, he was in EMS building his trident, and he, I guess, missed piracy. So, and with the scrutiny of guilds that were more active at the time, like TGFT and other trading guilds, questioning his reason for joining EMS, he built this espionage character, joined Family, but he actually went through extraordinary lengths to separate the times that he played on espionage versus TRS, because Crazy Spence had this webpage that would show statistics, and it would show when people were active. So if you've got two pilots that are active in the same time zones, then they're at least in the same area of the world, or at least in similar time zones. So he went out of his way that he would only play the espionage character during US time zones, and he would only play the Red Spy character during Australian time zones. And he took it a step further to make espionage just completely unlovable. He basically was an uneducated Southern redneck. Oh my God. it was hilarious, and so he had the dialect of a moonshiner from the backwoods of Virginia, and he basically had this no holds barred cutthroat attitude, and everyone he met he demanded $1 million, and if they didn't pay in about 3 seconds he would kill them. So in terms of better pirate, I have to say that espionage was definitely the better pirate than TRS, because TRS was kind of the happy middle ground between where espionage was and the fluffy pirate that I was.
Unless I'm mistaken, TRS didn't stay a pirate. Didn't he move on to some trading guild, and that's when he actually built his trident?
So he left Family to build his trident, which he actually joined EMS legitimately, and then he built the trident, tried to stay in EMS. Of course, as a former pirate, he had everybody targeting him, questioning him. So eventually he left to take the focus off of EMS so they could continue to be the helpful guild, and came back to Family. Why we booted him, though, is an extension of that question. So when he joined Family, or when he rejoined Family, Mechatorias, there were a couple members that they decided they wanted to revitalize the Serco-nationalism at the time, which the nationalism at this point in the game was completely non-existent. Everything was you were either allied with the traders or you were allied with pirates, and there were a number of scenarios where a pirate would jump into the sector, and you would have Serco nationalists and Atani nationalists fight. They would join forces and they would fight the pirates, which was completely ridiculous. a proper state of things would be that one of them would pay the pirate for combat support, and then the pirate would join in the battle on whatever side paid them. This was completely lacking. So they, Mr. Chaos, that's who it was, Mr. Chaos. But so they founded Red, and Red was basically the espionage equivalent of nationalism, which at the time was completely a foreign concept, which led to guilds like TGFT and PA and Viper and everybody else just labeling them as pirates. But their stance was no association with Atani whatsoever, and they were completely cutthroat about it. And that was a good thing for their guild because it actually revitalized the nationalism between Serco and Atani. The downside, though, from our guild's perspective was that it put us at odds because we have UIT members, we have Atani members, we have Serco members, and this was back when a Serco member could have Volks and a Atani member could buy proms, depending on their standing. So there was really no racial separation in that regard, and so they started taking a stance of, they would attack our non-Serco members, which, as a guild we can't really abide. So since espionage and TRS were largely outed at that point and people knew they were the same person, we couldn't keep TRS in the guild, so we severed ties.
And yeah, things before the faction redux were definitely interesting, and I think have been more interesting ever since. Just because I don't think the faction redux actually accomplished everything that Incarnate imagined.
It really didn't. All it did was get people to create a character in every nation. So when I was playing, I had two characters. I had Savet Hegar, who was UIT, and then I had Savet, who was Serco. And at the time, both of them could fly Volks. Well, when they did the faction redux, I had no way to buy Volks anymore, and until at the time there was no comparable interceptor that was also a dogfighter. Now they since fixed that with the SVG, which is now a very capable interceptor and a very capable dogfighter. It still has trade-offs. There's still no other 3-port interceptor that's also a dogfighter, but that's a separate discussion. But basically all it's done is caused anybody who wants to fly Volks, anybody that wants to fly Volks now has an Atani character. Anybody who wants to fly Proms has a Serco character, and if they want the neutrality, they have a UIT character, or if they just want to fly the UDV, which is slowly getting better, but isn't quite there yet.
No, it's really not. It's really not. So how is Luigi?
Unfortunately, Luigi passed a while back, and if you're not familiar with Luigi, I have this habit of taking on hobbies that are probably going to kill me at a young age, and one of those hobbies is venomous snakes as pets. Luigi was a black and white spitting cobra. So he passed, unfortunately. And that's really one of the challenges with venomous snakes is you don't really... by the time you notice that something is wrong, it's usually too late. So we now have an equatorial spitting cobra.
And what is its name?
Its name is Isis because my wife loves Egyptian mythology.
Oh, sure, because Mario was already taken.
Right.
I guess he could have gone Princess Toadstool as well.
It could have. Now, this was also before, we had a terrorist group that decided to hijack the name of my pet cobra. But
you have a real-life pirate ship.
I have a real-life sailboat, and the running joke is that it's a pirate ship.
What's the name of the boat?
Parlay. It does have a pirate flag, which we fly while we sail.
Nice. How do the other sailors feel about it?
I haven't really noticed any ill will. Of course, we're not very fast, so we haven't caught anybody, and we mostly just sail around drinking.
That sounds about right, sir.
It's a 25-foot Hunter. It was formerly outfitted for racing. I picked it up on a bargain after I spent a grand total of 4 hours sailing in the Caribbean on a Hobie Cat, and got an amazing deal buying a sailboat in November, if you can believe that.
I can't imagine they're used a whole lot during the winter, so yeah, I think I could believe it.
But it's great.
Hey, you got to do what you enjoy. I'm here making YouTube videos, apparently.
Somebody has to do it. This is an excellent excellent exposure for the game, and it's something that we really don't have, because outside of the mobile space, we really don't have anything advertising Vendetta as an actual PC game. And it gets overlooked a lot because people go to things like Star Citizen or more modern games that may have more updated graphics. So
but
I've been very
never
impressed
have
with
a
what you
Twitch
can
combat. Unless you have Jesus, what are the requirements for Star Citizen? It's something insane.
I'm not sure. I don't really follow any games until they actually support Linux.
That might
Which
not
is one
happen.
reason that
that might not happen with that one.
Supposedly it's going to happen, but there's no timeline on it. But that's actually one of the reasons that I've continued to support Vendetta, even during my my periods of inactivity, is just because for everything that's wrong with Vendetta, they are still supporting the Linux platform. They're releasing a native game, and it's in step largely with the Windows and the Mac and the mobile client. So they are showing Linux love, and that's definitely worth supporting.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing is that the iOS client is probably the one that's the most behind. And I actually found Vendetta in the Ubuntu Software Center when I first joined, so I was right there along with you, sir.
It wasn't the Software Center, but I actually found it through a Ubuntu forum post when I actually started looking at games that were supported on Linux.
So are you watching 100 by chance?
I am.
Okay.
But I don't have my character linked through IRC, so I can't respond.
So the Red Spy, or TRS, would like to know how you would feel if he told you he was never going to give you that dingo, assuming he's Mel.
I would be very sad, and here's why. Because I already have a dingo, and she's a female, and she's not fixed, and I always had wanted a male so that I could have dingo puppies. And right now, when she goes into heat, because she has nobody to satisfy her needs, she's actually figured out that she can double herself over, pin her legs against the ground, and bring herself to climax with both of her legs kicking. And this is something no dog should have to go through. So by denying me this dingo, he is essentially subjecting my dog to a lifetime of perpetual masturbation.
There's some things that just should never happen. Moving on. Why can't Family Galactic Travel teach us about corporate America?
Well, I don't know that Family Galactic Travel has a lot to teach us. I often make the joke that I'm a business professional role-playing a pirate who role-plays a business professional. But the reality of corporate America is that the public perception of a company is largely created by the individual contributors in that company in isolated departments. And all of those departments are trying to meet deliverables set by executives who are completely out of touch with what metrics actually translate to customer satisfaction. So when you've got executives making, you've got them setting setting goals for the company that are built around increased monetization of, say, support calls or increased add-on sales and things that customers really don't want when they call the company to to get better service, but make shareholders happy when the company shows additional profit. You basically create this situation where the company is more successful by making customers less happy. And you've got a few companies that have stepped outside of that mindset. Costco is a good example where they actually pay their customers, or not customers, they pay their employees a living wage, they give them actual benefits, and they're one of the most profitable companies, and they consistently deliver dividends to their shareholders. But that's driven by a CEO who isn't completely out of touch with reality. And unfortunately, companies now, if they're not a new company trying to drive growth and take market share, they're just kind of riding out the success that they've already built until they go out of business, until they get bought by another company. It's just a long, slow, painful downward spiral.
I mean, unless you're NVIDIA and Intel, and you could do all that and still just ride the top of the market share.
Well, but they're actually innovating. NVIDIA, ATI, or whatever the
ATI, now AMD, the red team.
Okay. Yeah. They're actually making new products. They're pushing the envelope. They're trying to deliver new things to customers for more profit, or better profit, or continued sales. But then if you look at the flip side of that coin, and you've got, say, a company like Comcast, who has a tremendous market opportunity in expansion. The U.S. is terrible in terms of broadband. If you live in a city and you've got a couple providers, you're good. But if you live in any outlying area, your choices are usually one broadband provider with horrible statistics, or something like satellite internet, fixed wireless, or something that is less stable or has high latency.
Crazy thing we have going on is one of the people that I do a lot of work for, he has a shop out in the country. And what we're going to do this week is we're actually going to beam his home Comcast connection 4.7 kilometers out to where his shop is.
Nice. How are you doing that?
There's a couple, I don't really know what they're called, but they're from a company called Ubiquity. Linus Tech Tips actually did a video on them, which is what gave me the idea. And now we're actually putting them to use. So we purchased them, I configured them on Friday, and we're going to mount them on poles and get them up there this week sometime. So ask me in a week how it went.
I will. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm hoping it works really well, because he has satellite internet where the shop is now, and it's basically like a first-year DSL connection. So, back to questions, I suppose. What is your favorite warranty malfunction one-liner of all time?
See, I don't have a favorite. And I know another question asked how long these take to think up, and how much work goes into this, but every single warranty one-liner is thought up on the spot. Now, some of them borrow components from prior warranty messages, but basically it follows a general formula. I'll look at the pilot name, I'll look at the ship they were flying. If they had cargo, I'll look at the cargo they have. Or I'll just take something that I find interesting that I've been reading about or have been working on recently, and turning that into some sort of malfunction. So I generally try to take two things that have nothing to do with each other. For example, a warp drive and a radio antenna, and combining them together to have something to do with, a leaky fluid capacitor, or a bad heat sink, or just something that doesn't make sense. But if I can tie it to the pilot name, for example, if the pilot name is Shiny or Sparkles or Captain or something that lends itself to a good joke, those are definitely my favorites.
Nice. Ziha, who I was just fighting, and that's how I'm pronouncing that name because I don't know how you would actually pronounce it, asked a couple of questions as well. The first one is, have you ever gotten in trouble for your jokes?
So that's an interesting question, and the short answer is no, I haven't.
Not yet.
Yeah, I should knock on wood there. Generally, when I make a joke, it's in step with the pulse of the chat. So the chat's already descending into some sort of chaos. So then when the joke comes out, it's just an extension of the chaos. I did actually get asked politely at one point to stop sexualizing midgets, to which I politely refused.
So I take it that wasn't from a dev then.
No, that was from a dev. But my rebuttal was that since they're not going to approach any other player and say stop sexualizing tall women or stop sexualizing homosexuality or stop sexualizing any other fetish, no matter whatever it may be, then you can't single me out for any jokes that I make about midgets. Now, are they in bad taste? Absolutely. Right. But when you're sitting in a sector waiting for people to come through and you're drinking rum and smoking a cigar and something pops into your head, who cares?
Yeah. Next question is, how did the jokes evolve/start? Was it from the beginning, or how did you... I got the window covered, I'm shooting. Something about how did you come up with the creativity?
So I'm going to take this to refer to the warranty malfunctions. And since I started pirating, I've never liked the term "should have paid." It works for pirates, but it just always jumps out at me as not original. There's no finesse to it. There's no pizzazz. So I always try to.
Fami didn't coin the shouldn't pay. I'm aware of it. It was around long before.
Exactly. So I've never said should have paid. So from the first time I pirated, or the first time I killed somebody that didn't pay, it's always been something that I found humorous that made me laugh, and it just kind of evolved from there. It started. When I started, it was, I want to say it was insurance, and then it kind of evolved to a travel agency. Come see the sights of gray space, all-inclusive vacation, guaranteed not to die, maybe. And then it evolved into the aftermarket ship warranties.
I know you've given me the line a couple times, but we haven't actually gotten it in the recording at all. So can I get you to drive your sales pitch home, sir?
Oh, absolutely. This is Savet Hegar coming to you courtesy of Family Galactic Travel, your #1 source in aftermarket ship warranties. Please visit us on the web at familygalactictravel.com. Remember, fly safe, fly warranted.
Now, is the website still active? It's been a while since I visited it.
It is still active. There, aside from the discussion forum that we have for coordination and for interacting with customers, there aren't a whole lot of updates, but there's not a whole lot of updates to what we do.
Mm-hmm. Does it still have the gold and silver and platinum packages and all that on there?
It does.
So not much may have changed since the last time I was there.
No, there's been a few new news posts. The officers may have changed, but it's largely consistent.
So Pizza's Good, or Ren Good. I can never pronounce that name. I'm just going to say Ren. He had a couple questions for you as well, sir. The first one being, how many crickets does it take to change a light bulb?
That's an interesting question. Now, there's a joke there as well, in that anytime there is a suggestion that I don't feel is getting adequate developer focus or attention, and I want to continually drive it to the top of the suggestion forum and just be completely annoying and kick a dead horse until it comes back to life, I'll post cricket pictures. And perfect example was the give money command, where it was case sensitive, and no other command was case sensitive, or there may have been one or two other commands, but largely commands are case insensitive. If you invite somebody to your group, it's case insensitive. If you invite them to a guild or they join a guild, it's case insensitive. Private messages are case insensitive, but case sensitivity was always, you always had to have the exact case on giving money, which, when you have a game that allows piracy, and then you have pirates that have just completely crazy names, like I'm going to use Zihuakodal as an example, but
it's funny, he just jumped in my sector.
And his name actually isn't bad because it only has one cap. But what if he had, what if he had 3 caps, or what if he had 4 caps, or it gets crazy for some of these pilot names.
Yeah, like Dirty Ore.
Yeah, so this was actually a usability problem, in that you have new people that come to the game and they get pirated, but they can't pay the pirate because they can't spell the person's name in the time that the pirate's willing to wait, and then they die, they get frustrated, and they leave. So this was something that needed to be addressed, so I just kept throwing cricket pictures at it until they finally fixed the case sensitivity. But to answer Rin's question, I think it largely depends on the cricket, because if you look at the difference, between the North American field cricket and, say, the brown house cricket, which is often used for feeding reptiles, the North American field cricket looks a little bit larger, it's more robust, it has a much darker pigmentation, and you have to imagine that pigmentation is going to directly translate into more heat resistance. So I would say that if you've got a team of North American field crickets changing a light bulb, you can probably get by with about 7, whereas if you had the brown house crickets, you're probably going to need closer to about 15. Now, if you have a mixed workforce, because we definitely want to encourage cricket diversity, then you're probably going to be in the neighborhood of maybe the 10 to 12 mark.
Okay. So, Tom Leher versus Aurelio Voltaire. I'm going to ask if you could explain who they are, because I honestly don't know, but who wins?
That was another one I actually had to look up, and they both appear to be music personalities of one nature or another. And not being familiar with either of them, but reading a little bit, I've come to the conclusion that I prefer Barney, because he is a large, singing, dancing dinosaur, and he's purple.
Yep. So when I was young, probably like 3rd grade, my dad bought me a coat from the thrift store. And this coat just happened to have purple on it. And green. It did have the green. And long behold, I was called Barney for the rest of elementary school.
There are a lot of worse purple dinosaurs to be.
Well, Barney ended up being a pretty bad purple dinosaur in the end, too, unless I'm mistaken. So what are your favorite newbie weapons?
There's a lot of good questions in this interview, and I actually don't think there are any good newbie weapons. And here's why. Actually, I made some notes here. Let me find those. Okay. First and foremost, they're all too slow. When a new player comes into the game, you've got things like ions, phase cannons, plasma, and they're going 150, 160. The phase is 170 to 175 for the newbie, 130 to 160. So the first thing that a new player sees when they jump into this game are these slow-moving weapons that look like they're shooting Pez out of a dispenser, and the sound effect is about the equivalent of playing whack-a-mole with Teletubbies. I think one of the biggest areas we need to improve the game is in the newbie weapons. We need to increase the speed, maybe not necessarily the damage that they do, but we need to increase the speed and adjust the sound effects so that when people jump into the game, they actually feel like they're shooting a gun from a spaceship and not playing an arcade game from the 80s.
And I'll echo that point with you, because one of the huge problems I have with a lot of the newbie weapons is that they all, besides different colored balls, are slow as hell, do very little damage, and are exactly the same. And there's seems to be like 8 of them. You know, eventually you just seem to use newts, or I forget what the other one's called, the blue ones, I'm just going to call it. But yeah, if there's some more diversity in the newbie weapons, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say it's going to bring everyone to VO type of change, but it would definitely help playability quite a bit.
And then my other gripe is that by the time you can get a plasma weapon, say you hit Combat 1 or Light Combat 1 or whatever it is, you can buy the Plasma HX. Mm-hmm. But then you can also buy the Plasma Mark 1 and the Plasma Mark 2, which are worse than the Plasma HX. Yeah. So we've got this scenario where by the time you can afford the best, or by the time you can buy the best in class plasma weapon, you don't. None of the other weapons are even in the running. And the Plasma HX, while it's a good weapon for shooting a queen, is not a good PvP weapon.
So, sir, what is your favorite VO skybox, and what is a skybox? Is this like the background of space? I was a little lost on this question as well.
That's what I took it to mean, and my favorite is probably Odia. In addition to Odia being just the heart of gray space and having more Corvus stations than any other sector, and just being kind of the central hive of scum and villainy, it's just got this nice eerie orange glow that makes you think this place may not be the safest.
For a long time, I thought all the backgrounds were static, and it wasn't until I tried to actually make a poster with them that I realized that there is some depth to them, and they change perspective a little bit. So I didn't know that each system was kind of different, so I'll have to actually pay more attention to that next time. Greenwall, although this isn't what he asked, I'm still asking it anyways. When was PA reborn?
So PA has been dead for a long time, and they had a previous guild leader named Interstellar who basically made a name for himself by being completely racist and homophobic and just basically inappropriate, but in a non-amusing way, and drew the ire of a number of other guilds. So Greenwall was actually the one that revived PA. I'm surprised he asked that question, or maybe he just wanted me to give him kudos here. Yeah. But when he took over, he basically he started doing recruitment drives. New player outreach. He actually went as far as securing safety for his new players while they were in nation space, so that they wouldn't get targeted by pirates and killed relentlessly. And they actually came back to the point where we would see more PA members than we would see, some of the other guilds like TGFT and Atan and Red and One and whoever was active at the time. But then they kind of died again when someone decided that they should start marketing themselves as pirate hunters, and then of course the pirates started hunting the pirate hunters, and they didn't have the combat force to really stand up for that, and they just got hunted into oblivion. So they're dead again. But I do want to give Greenwall kudos, because he did revive them from the dead, and they were quite successful for a while.
So, moving on to death sports questions, I'm actually going to have to bring up the doc to see this. Between 120 tons of camouflage and 120 tons of Deneb rum, what would be the heaviest booty for a salty sea dog?
everybody knows the best way to transport rum is in your body, whereas the only real way to transport Samoflange is rectally. So clearly, Samoflange is the heaviest, because when you're lugging around 120 tons of something in your rear versus distributing it throughout your body by drinking it, it's going to have a bigger impact.
Have you seen Mr. Moss?
So I couldn't find what he was referring to. So there were two possible ways that I interpreted that. One is Mr. Moss had something to do with science, and there were I found a couple references to tobacco. So I don't know if that's a reference to cigars and pipe tobacco, or the other way that I took that was pronouncing it Mr. Mouse, which was related to Luigi and feeding him mice. So I don't know that I can really answer that question, and I apologize for that.
And I used to play World of Tanks quite a bit, and originally in one of the original, I believe, Russian lines, the tier 10 or the top tank that you could get was the Moss or Mouse. And so that was the only thing I could relate the question to, and so I was just as lost as you, sir. Can you say online for our audience with your best pirate accent, ahoy me earthies, shiver me timbers, yar.
Ahoy me hearties, shiver me timbers, yar.
Wow! Oh man, this is horrible. I'm gonna have to throw an age disclaimer at the beginning of this one. I can just see it now. I can see it. We already talked about Golden Gate times and Rainbow Pirate Fluffy Feathers and everything else. All right.
Don't forget dingo masturbation.
Oh, yes. Did ye mass hack when answering the first question?
If I was hauling around 120 tons of something rectally, I would definitely want to mass hack. But if that was a general question as to whether I've ever used any mass hacks, the answer would be no.
Okay, in which guild are you, by the way? Do you need an invite to ADX?
So I've always pronounced that axe, but I could be saying that wrong.
No, that's probably how you pronounce it.
So I think by now we know that I'm in FAMI, aka La Familia, or Family Galactic Travel. I've always loved the Axe Guild, and I've actually been invited a couple times, and I have no complaints against them, but I'm just retardedly loyal, and as long as there is a FAMI and as long as there's a place for me in FAMI, I don't see myself going anywhere else.
So quick question, is Kenny B of TGFT, is Kenny B his actual character name?
He was K Beretta, K-B-I-R-E-T-A or E-T-T-A, I can't remember. But I believe he has since changed it to Kenny B, since people were just collectively calling him Kenny. And that was a reference to the fact that he dies constantly in combat. So
I'm sorry.
The South Park reference of, oh my God, you killed Kenny.
Wow. I didn't know that. Oh, that was great. So he has a number of questions for you, sir. The first one is, do you take full responsibility for Westacular being able to steal your guild's bank, since you were warned in advance of that possibility and didn't make changes?
Okay, I just reconnected, I think. So
did you miss that question?
No, I got the question.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that that you could still hear me okay. So ultimately, everybody has to take responsibility for their own actions. Now, I think the larger issue here that I have is just the simple lack of flexibility when it comes to guild structure and guild hierarchy and guild mechanics in the Vendetta Online game. Mm-hmm. And I know that's something that Guild Software is looking at improving, but you've basically got 2 spots for lieutenant and one spot for commander, and these are the only 3 that can invite people, and these are your top tier positions. But there's in order to unless you have a bot running one of your LT slots, or unless you stagger your LTs so that one is running in one time zone versus another time zone, etc., you're really kind of sticking all of your eggs in one basket. So was I wrong to trust Westacular? Yeah, absolutely. He contributed a lot to the guild. He was a good member. He played an absolute ridiculous amount of time. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things that I look at Vendetta as a community, and there's not a lot I wouldn't do to help any member of that community, whether it be somebody that's in FAMI, or somebody that's in Void, or somebody that's even in TGFT. I've actually bought subscription keys for people just at random times when they haven't been able to afford to play the game, just because I like the game and I like to support it, and I want people to play the game. So that being said, I take that perspective when I play the game, and when I've got somebody that I think I can trust, I trust that person. And if that person then later shows that they're not worthy of that trust, well, that's more of a reflection on that person's character.
Why did Family go to Guild Software like a bunch of ninnies and ask the devs for their stolen credits back?
So my position at the time was that the access that was given to lieutenant slots was for the furtherance of guild business. So for a user to use that access for basically for something that was, just kind of a shitty thing to do, was a breach of the, how do I want to say that? It was a breach of the social contract that was built around that role. Now, that was the position we took at the time. We didn't know if Guild Software would side with us, and this was actually as they started to change their position from if you can do it, it's legal, to don't be an asshole. And we've seen recently where they have started to take a more hardline approach for things like, I'll mention the TGFT plugin because that was a recent one, where, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's within the scope of the game. That being said, it's water under the bridge. If Wes had come to me and said, "Hey, based on everything that I've done for the guild, I want this. I want all these credits," I'd have probably given it to him, because in the end, credits don't matter, and I can look at it as a severance package. But at the time, it was something that we didn't know an answer to, so we raised a ticket and we made our case, and they decided against us, and that's fine.
We already asked if FAMI is going to plan to take away Gray from Void, but let's see. The next question was, do you think FAMI will overcome Void's dominance?
So I think that goes back to that original question, and that Void's quote-unquote dominance is largely one of activity and presence. And that's really only going to be decided by Void and its leadership. Every guild in VO that actually sticks around, whether it be TGFT, PA, FAMI, Atan, One, Void, Axe, etc., they grow and they wane based on politics at the time. And you've got whether the vets transfer their actual characters over, or they create an alt and they put the alt in that guild, or it's new players joining and they want to be part of the current big thing. That's largely what defines guild growth and guild dominance. So as long as Fami exists, which I have no reason to think that it wouldn't, I have no doubt that eventually we will be at a level that's similar or greater than our former glory. Whether Void is still active at that time, or Void is a presence at that time, or Void continues to exist, I can't really answer that question because I don't know what's in store for Void.
Now, in your opinion, is Void's dominance actually kind of surprising, given that they were a brand new guild that just started?
Actually, they weren't a brand new guild. They were a idol guild.
And you're correct. You reminded me of that. But episode number 1 was Galanoth, who had just changed his name to Voidance, and so that was almost at the beginning of. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I got disconnected. So my understanding is that they're not actually a new guild. They're a guild that was, they were idle or kind of in hibernation, like, long-term guilds go through when they wane in activity. And then when Galanoth or Voidance moved over, it generated the controversy that brought in veterans like, Estrian Process and Seeger, and gave them the support that they needed to actually start building and, establishing dominance. So it's not really surprising, because again, the growth and the waning of guilds in VO is purely political, and it's based on whatever's happening at the time. And as soon as Void isn't the latest greatest thing, that interest is going to subside, and those players are going to move to whatever is the latest and greatest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just the constant transition of how VO rotates. So with YT's past history of revoking family warranties, how did he become CO?
So first I should explain, I guess, the revoking of warranties. YT takes a much harder line approach than I do, in terms of you are bound by the company that you keep. And when one or two members of a guild is doing things that casts the whole guild in a negative light, then he focuses that on the entire guild. Now, my position is a little different in that if we take money from a player, that player has safety from us. So the challenge there is in marrying those concepts and finding that middle ground and making sure that we don't invalidate warranties for players that have paid, even though some of their members may be quote unquote asshats.
Mm-hmm. And that falls pretty well in line with the next question, which was, with your history of making sure family credibility is honored, do you think you should return?
What we've done in that respect, stop taking payments and keeping them. YT is an excellent leader. He's vocal. He inserts himself into whatever political issues are happening at the time, and he's great for driving up interest. To answer the question as to whether or not I should return, I'm a good stability leader, but I'm not a good growth leader, and right now I don't really have the energy or the time to really grow the guild to where it needs to be. So YT is probably the perfect leader at the moment, and I'm more than happy to support him in that role.
So Grizzly Space Bear, speaking of bears, had a question for you, and it was, what is your opinion of the Space Bears Guild? Rawr.
Rawr. That's changed over time. At first, he was a player that was really trying to find his niche. He tried just about every role play under the sun. He changed his name many different times. First it was the Axiom. That might not have been first, but it was the Axiom.
Then it was the Axiom. Or is Placeo Grizzly Space Bear?
No, I think Placeo is a different character, but it went from the Axiom to War of the Worlds tripod to a couple other things, and then he built Grizzly Space Bear. And so to answer the question that was asked, I absolutely love the Grizzly Space Bear Guild because he's taken this thing that on its surface is absolutely ridiculous, and he's stuck with it, and he's built role play around it, and he's consistent in all of his interactions, and he's always following everything up with "rar," and it matches his personality. And there have been other players that have tried to do that, like Seeger tried to do that with his electricity character, and he followed everything up with Bizzert or whatever, however you spell an electricity sound, and it was just absolutely ridiculous and stupid. And Seeger's a good player, so I can't take that away from him, but thank God he left that role play, because it was ridiculous. But the Grizzly Space Bear Guild is so great because it's so ridiculous, and he sticks with it regardless of whether people like it.
So Pup has made a return. How do you feel about that?
Well, my first question would be, is it the actual Pup?
That was mine as well.
The Pup?
That was mine as well.
So is this a return in the game or a return on the forum?
I have yet to see it, but I just hear a lot of chatter, and apparently he's in game. Granted, I haven't seen any sector growls or anything like that yet, but I'm assuming that they're coming at some point.
Well, he was always a great roleplay character in that he never deviated from his role. When he was in game, he was always in the same ship, and he was always flying the same loadout, and he never deviated, never jumped into politics, never inserted himself into any of the political strife that was in the game. He just hunted other players, and he flew his little Centurion. And people may or may not know this, but when you killed Pup, he would actually transmit a congratulations to you that says, "Congratulations, you are number such and such to kill Pup." And he would give you a few statistics along with your kill.
Oh yeah, and he wasn't easy to kill. You had to chase him down. He, if you shot back at all, he was running.
Oh yeah, and he was a master runner. He would. My favorite thing that he would do, and I actually borrowed this on a number of occasions, is he would turbo away from you, and then he would do an about face, and he would turbo straight at you. And by the time you turned around to try to catch him, he was out of sector.
Yep, he was a very interesting player. Sad that he left. Big Nasty One had a question for you. It is, what is your favorite show? Little Women of LA or Little Women of Atlanta? Or do you like them equally?
So, despite my inappropriate jokes and comments when I have way too much rum, I actually don't watch reality TV. If it's not on Netflix or Amazon Prime, or if it doesn't find its way to my computer by some mysterious file sharing network that would in no way be illegal and a violation of copyright infringement, I generally don't watch it, so I don't have any opinion on those.
So how do you feel about the Vendetta Online torrent download? My cat doesn't like it.
Well, torrent is
cat doesn't like it.
Torrent is a great tool, and it has a lot of legal and a lot of legitimate purposes, so I think it's a good thing. My only question would be, are there enough people actually seeding the Vendetta Online torrent to make that a better download mechanism than simply downloading it from a mirror that Guild software provides?
And I think part of my issue is that I've never had any issues downloading from the mirror. There's been a couple times where I've intentionally told myself, oh, I'm gonna make sure I seed the torrent on something that stays online, and never do it. Zia asked if he/she always, cat, leave my pen alone. There, bye. Have a live question for you. And now my cat is eating my grumpy cat post-it on my monitor. Some things you can never win. Okay. A-Dog asked, where does your fascination with midgets and rape come from? Are they interconnected?
So they're definitely not interconnected, and there's really no individual fascination except for their topics that most people don't talk about. So again, when you're sitting alone in a sector waiting for somebody to come by, and you go through a lot of rum when you're just sipping on rum and smoking a cigar, and maybe watching a show on the other monitor, and there are very few things that you can't find a joke that correlates to rape or midgets.
Really? Let's not make a contest of that.
I was going to give you a couple examples, but in the interest of keeping this geared towards a PG-13 audience, we'll bypass that.
So apparently Zihao's live question is, so Fami are warranty salesmen. What do you think about Baxter the Crafter 2.0, who is now a trader / miner and gave up the business?
And that goes back to one of my early comments in the interview that Fami has never been a purely pirate organization. We certainly don't discourage piracy, and we actually have a pretty robust infrastructure built around selling warranties and the protection racketeering that we offer. But we've always encouraged people to play however they want, and if you look on the website, you'll actually see that there are positions listed for things like a cargo transport intern, and we absolutely want people in the guild who do things besides piracy. That could be mining, that could be nationalistic activities like capture the cargo, that could be queen hunting, because there's so much in the game that people can take advantage of, that just because you join a pirate guild doesn't mean that all you have to do is pirate.
Yeah. I think Void is actually a good example of that too, because, and I don't necessarily know that they claim to be a pirate guild, but I do know that they have a number of members that aren't necessarily pirates, which leads to problems during nation wars, but we'll not even talk about that crap now. So there are a lot of questions about this insurance salesman roleplay that you have going on. Was it your idea alone?
So first, people use the term insurance and warranties kind of interchangeably, but they're not really interchangeable. Insurance pays you when something goes wrong. Warranties fix things before they go wrong, or when they go wrong, they fix the problem. So we really try to differentiate that, because there are so many aspects of how somebody could market themselves as a pirate that we don't want to be we don't want to have a monopoly on the interesting piracy. So we really try to clarify that we are not an insurance company, we're an aftermarket ship warranty company. But to answer that question, the warranties were my idea. It was basically, I was looking for a new way to differentiate myself, and at the time I was doing the travel company, come see the sights of gray space, stay in the wonderful resorts of Odia, come see the Bractus star cluster, and I wanted something different or something new, so I came up with the idea of warranties. And I have a lot of side interests, whether it be auto mechanics or whether it be just random things that I'm reading. So when you take something, you take things that are in no way related to spaceships, and you use that as a defect reason for why they blew up. It amused me greatly, so I just turned that into a way to brand my piracy. The rebranding idea behind Fami It was largely my idea, but I can't say that it was all my idea. And there was another question that may come up later on of why we did that. And this goes back to the politics at the time and the new shiny that always attracts veterans, and it always attracts, the new talent and the good talent. And at the time, Nahan Lore was back in the game, and he was active, and he had spun up this new gray space guild called Law. And the concept was, you got, the law got you. And it was clever, and it was attracting a ton of attention. And me and I think it was YT and TRS at the time, we basically started talking about it. It's like, hey, how can we prevent the hemorrhaging of players? Because this was going to attract veterans, and it was going to attract pirates and people who really wanted something new and exciting. How can we get out in front of this and prevent that hemorrhaging of players, and prevent us from losing our resources? So that's where we decided, let's rebrand ourselves as a warranty company, put a professional looking veneer on it, basically go the whole 9 yards. The implementation of it was a joint effort between TRS and myself. I built a lot of the back-end functionality. TRS worked on a lot of the graphics and the presentation layer. We coordinated a lot on the verbiage, and basically we worked hand in hand over a period of, I think it was about 2 weeks, to bring it from start to fruition and bring it to what you see now.
So, now you told me that you didn't necessarily like the should have paid lines, but the question specifically mentions them. So, who contributed most to the should have paid lines? How many hours a day did you spend thinking these up?
So I think they mean the warranty defect reasons, where you find somebody and you say, and you kill them because they don't pay, and you say, I'm sorry, sir, your brake pedal had a faulty fluid reservoir, and
but those two actually go together. You didn't do well on that one.
Well, do brake pedals really have a fluid? Actually, I guess the brake line does have a fluid reservoir, but yeah. So some of them are better than others, and some of them are worse than others. And of course, I always like flow regulators, and I like radios. So I'm sorry, sir, the flow regulator on your radio was stuck on country music. Your pilot got depressed, and his wife left him, his dog ran away, and his truck broke down. So basically just taking random things that pop into your head, and a lot of them are recycled to make new ones, but they're thought up entirely on the spot, and they really don't take any effort at all, except for the amount of rum that it takes to get into that state of mind.
Wow. Adestria just got me down to 3% using swarms. I am rusty as all hell. This is sad. So what questions did the Sorting Hat ask you before it decided to put you into the House of Slytherin?
So in this case, the Sorting Hat was Blastomaster, and I'm taking the House of Slytherin to mean Fammy, but when I inquired about joining, the first question is, why do you want to join a pirate guild? And my response was, I don't know if I want to be a pirate, but I know that you guys have things that you can teach me, and I know there's a lot that I can learn, and the rest from there was history.
And that was shortly after they pirated you as well, wasn't it?
It was.
Nice. Have you ever stolen from, exploited, or exploited a player only to find yourself feeling bad about it later?
I really don't. The reason is because I am such a fluffy pirate. I do everything I can to make being pirated enjoyable by other players. So let's say you've got a level 1 newbie that ventures out into Edris or into Latos, and he's had warning after warning after warning that he should not be there. He homes at Sedina, and he ignores all good advice, and now he's stuck. So you clearly can't just let them go, because they need to learn a lesson. But at the same time, you don't want to make it so completely terrible for them that they get frustrated, they give up the game, and they stop playing, because new players are our lifeblood. Everybody quits playing eventually, and the new players pick up the mantle. I was new at some point. Seeger was new at some point. I'm not sure if Estrian Prosis was ever new. I think he's just been there forever. But but largely, it's the new players that need to learn the ins and the outs of the game, and they're the ones that are going to make up the future guard. So I let players slip by occasionally. Give it a good show, make them think they slipped by, by the skin of their teeth. One of the things I do for new players, I always try to check a player's levels before I send the payment amount. When I pirate a player, there's actually 3 hails that they get. The first hail is a salutation saying, I'm sorry, but you need to buy a warranty, or something to that effect. Depending on the character that I'm playing on, there's a couple different messages. But then the next message is always an amount. So before I send that amount, I check what the player's levels are, and if that player is a level 1 character in a Centurion or an EC89.
So to all those who have to listen to this from here on out, this was kind of the problem at the beginning of the interview, was the echoing. Long story short, there's really not anything we can do about it. So in the future, I'll try to have alternative voice chat set up as redundancies. But I do appreciate you guys holding on. This interview has already been an hour and 40 minutes, plus the hour that we spent just going through technical crap. So Savet, thank you for hanging in there, and audience, thank you guys for listening as well.
My pleasure.
So just a few generic questions actually that are left. And the first one is, what are your favorite ships / loadouts for committing acts of piracy?
My absolute favorite ship has to be what I call my Angry Pecker. And that sounds worse than it is, but it's a Valkyrie X1 with 2 Anubis Raven ion blasters, generally chain fired, and then a Sunflare rocket launcher. And the joke is that the Sunflare makes it angry, and of course the Ravens make it a pecker. But it's an extremely light, agile ship, but the Sunflare gives you enough punch to hit a fleeing target or keep people on their toes and keep them from getting too up in your face.
So who are your favorite opponents and why?
I actually had an answer to this question, and then I just drew a blank. I have to say one of my favorites has to be Rin Ganbaro, and he's a good pilot. He's not the best pilot in the universe, nor am I the best pilot in the universe, but I love how he dives into combat with his dual Gauss on a core vault and just completely goes balls out, and win or loss, you really can't keep him at bay. He's going to be in your face, and you have to adjust to that. So he's always fun to fight.
And with Gauss, that's really just the way to play, because if you try to hold back, you're just going to get eaten alive trying to get within range.
It is. I've got a lot of people that I like fighting. I like fighting Seeger. I like fighting Estrian Process. I like fighting a lot of our current allies that are in, whether they be 1 or SKV. But my favorite way to fight is kind of the impromptu fights where you're not actually going into the fight thinking that you're going to have a fight. So when one player just happens across another player, whether that player's a pirate or that player is a nationalist, you get loadouts that are different from what you're expecting. So when Estrian or Seeger or somebody jumps into a furball or a PvP match, they grab their absolute favorite ship and their favorite loadout, and it's kind of one-dimensional because you know what they're going to do, they know what they're going to do, but when you happen across an opponent that maybe wasn't expecting a fight, or or in my case, I'm loaded out for hunting fleeing ships with a dual Sunflare Volk, or I'm in an energy Volt with an SVG, or I'm in a Greyhound or something that maybe isn't the most nimble ship, and then you come across somebody that you want to fight and you don't know what they're carrying. It just makes the fight more interesting, and people have to adapt to that level of unknown.
So second question is, who are your least favorite opponents and why?
I don't know that I have any least favorite opponents.
What? Kenny B and Zoc, you're saved this week.
I'm sorry?
It's like the running joke. I've asked this question in the last 3 interviews. 2 common answers. Kenny B and Zoc.
So Kenny's an interesting player in that he will stick around and fight when he respects the person that he's fighting. But if he doesn't like or respect the person that he's fighting, he kind of falls into that win by annoying them approach. And so he'll swarm and then he'll run, and it just irritates people, and that's why they don't like fighting him. But generally when we fight, he sticks around and he finishes the fight. Now, I would use this opportunity to encourage him, if he's not already, to actually work on building his skills with things like light energy and flares and weapons that take skill to use. And you're going to die a lot more than if you fire flares and run, but you don't learn anything if you're not dying.
So moving on, what makes you happy when playing VO?
The thing that makes me the happiest is when I have the opportunity to think up some hilarious defect reason that has absolutely no grounds in reality, and the person comes onto 100 and they're just completely contrary, and like, my ship didn't malfunction, you killed me, and it just becomes this back and forth banter of, no sir, I didn't kill you, you had a faulty radio antenna and it interfered with your seatbelt regulator. And just and that reaction just makes the game for me.
What is the most important feature for VO to have? Is it dynamic economy, station building, more involved combat missions, or something else? We know Incarnate can't build them all at once, so which would you prioritize and choose?
The most important thing from my perspective is an actual impact to dying. Right now, if you look at the state of group combat, whether it's in B8, whether it's in Latos, you have this scenario where people, you get a group of players on both sides, and when one of them dies, they spawn to a nearby station, usually sitting in a D14. They jump back into a Corvolt, or they jump back into a Greyhound, and they're back in the action before any of the fight has really changed in dynamics. And if you look at a lot of other first-person shooter type games, which you really can't get away from comparing Vendetta to, because it is a first-person shooter MMORPG, there's always some kind of spawn counter that limits the impact of a dead person coming back into the fight before the people that actually won the fight have a chance to make a difference. So, from my perspective, that's probably the biggest impact, because it's going to change the way that group battles unfold. You're going to have a clear winner and a clear loser, and it's not just going to be the group that gets bored first.
Yeah.
And then probably the second thing that I think is going to make the biggest impact is just a lasting impact to actions that happen in the game. So we've talked about void and gray space dominance and who can unseat them, but there's really nothing that there's no impact to void having a gray space dominance unless you're hauling sensitive equipment and a Behemoth XC, and that's a whole other conversation. But some mechanic to actually make sectors be impacted by the actions of players, whether that be local station ownerships, whether that be some sort of NPC mechanic that gives the dominant guild or the dominant group of players some sort of tactical advantage by having hired mercenaries. I don't know what that is, but we need something that actually makes your activities in VO have a meaningful impact.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It makes a lot of sense. I know Eve has their whole clone and implant kind of deal going on. And so I don't know if that's the answer for VO, but I definitely agree with you on that one. Group fights are furballs until people get bored and leave. And that is it. So the well has one run. So it is about that time if you're ready.
I am. Where should we meet?
I'm fighting Wash right now in D2, and I'm homed in D14. So Sedina's probably the easiest bet somewhere. We could do D2, the combination war sector if you like.
Can I talk you into Odia since the sights are so beautiful?
Not a problem. Let me grab a ship, sir.
And I get to fight somebody from the legendary Space Bear Guild.
Yes. And you brought an X1. Whew. Okay.
Now, I wasn't sure what you were going to bring or what character you were in. So if you would prefer we go vulture to vulture, I'm happy to do that.
It's perfectly fine, sir. I'm used to having my butt kicked. I might go this entire series not winning once.
So you don't want me to change ships?
No, you're perfectly fine the way you are.
Okay. Well, many would argue I'm not perfectly fine the way I am, but in terms of ship loadout, I'll take that.
Well, I was going for vendetta standpoint, not relationship. All right, sir. Well, thank you again. Good luck and have fun.
You too.
Oh, and my cat jumps on the keyboard. Go figure.
He's helping.
Right.
I couldn't resist sending a warranty message.
Oh, not a problem. You're very good at it, sir. I had no idea until I started. And you don't chain fire either. You were estuary, it seems like.
Actually, I am chain firing. It's just ravens are pretty quick. I'm getting a little lag, and I don't know if that's because we're video chatting, but it's not unbearable. Or not video chatting, but
audio chatting. Ooh. I didn't think I saw that flare.
Yeah, you're kind of bouncing around for me. It might balance out.
God damn it, John! Get your shit together. I'm gonna win my mass hacking. Or not mass. Lag hacking. Whatever that was. No, there's another flare. I did see that. At least make fight easy. You can do it. You can do it. No, another flare. Okay.
You're winning.
Am I winning? I don't even want to look at my percentage right now. I'm just concentrating on you. Now's not the time. Ran right into that one.
You know what they say, it's not rape if you run right into it. Oh, that was not. I did not mean to fire that one.
That's okay. Maybe you could do it a couple more times.
I'm sure you wouldn't mind that.
And then just let me know when you run out, too, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, God damn it.
See, this is the problem with chatting while we fight.
Oh, no! Good job,
Good fight, sir.
Good fight.
I hear the beep in my ear, and I assume that I made a hit, but it's actually you hitting me.
Oh, man. 158 on the timer, sir, plus the hour of setup. Whew. These things are not short whatsoever.
I'm sorry for taking so long.
No, it's not a problem, sir. As long as the audience enjoys it, I don't care.
I sometimes have a problem finishing.
But your dingo doesn't.
That's very true. She has no problems finishing.
Well, sir, thank you again for being a part. I hope that everyone got their questions in this time, because I know I missed a few with A-Dog.
There was only one question that I saw that I don't think we touched on, which is why I became a pirate, but I don't know if we wanted to hit that real quick.
No, you know what? I thought you pretty well covered it with your beginnings of VO as a
okay.
I didn't ask it, but if there's something you want to expand on, go ahead.
Well, it's more or less a funny story in that the first time I ever collected payment as a pirate, I wasn't actually trying to pirate, but I was in FAMI, and I'm flying through a sector, and there's a member of OR, the mining guild, flying through in a Behemoth XC, and I made an offhand comment about, don't you run into me with that thing, or something to that effect, and the next thing I know, I've got 100,000 credits sitting in my pocket. So at this point, I had to figure out how to add people to the payment list. And I thought, I might as well ask for credits. So I came across the next trader that I saw, which was Eka Stink. And I asked Eka for credits. That didn't work out as well.
And yeah, he's a pretty good pilot. He's also definitely drunk a lot, which I seem to mention in every episode.
Yeah, I've since come to the point where I can beat Eka, which there are some funny stories there as well. But I think we've taken enough time for this interview. So, all right, thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem.
And once again, please visit FamilyGalacticTravel.com for all of your aftermarket ship warranty needs.